bringing in the top talent, whether it's top MBA students, top bankers from your competitors, bringing them into Citi. Has that been a challenge given the crisis, given the exposure, given the hand of Washington in Wall Street?
Well, it certainly was been a challenge for the last couple of years because of uncertainty. Just like investors, hate uncertainty. Talented young people who are looking to figure out where to go and how to begin to build their careers hate uncertainty. But as things have kind of settled down and come to ground, we found that we're able to recruit. I think Citi has a fabulous platform for recruiting talented young people because it's the most global platform available in the world today. The uncertainty of the last couple of years in terms of even, was this thing going to survive or what's it going to look like coming out of the chute, a lot of the uncertainty is out of the system now. So the recruiting has picked up and we're, I think, in as good a shape as we've been in the last couple of years.
I wonder if pay compensation is a factor because let's look at your two firms. If they were competing for the on Wall Street,
Not
never
important.
for the same talent. You have Citi that still is partly held by the government. You don't know what control Washington will yield. You don't know what some of these rules in FinReg will play out to be. For you, Alan, your firm is not in the public eye. So are you having an easier time attracting top talent?
I think the competition for talent's always tough, for the right talent. But I've believed my whole career that the job of any organization is identify what kinds of people do well in their kind of environment and culture. And I think culture is extremely important.
This year has been quite a year for the relationship between Washington and Wall Street. We heard President Obama on 60 Minutes talk about fat cat bankers on Wall Street. The street didn't like that. Bankers heard another story when they met with the president just about a week later. So there have been two different tones from Washington, and it seems as though the divide between the Obama administration and big business is widening. Is it the rhetoric that's being used by the administration, or is it the policies, do you think, Dick?
That you think is adding to this widening of the divide.
Or at least the talk. Who knows? But there is more and more chatter about a divide between Washington and big business.
I actually thought that, when you go through the first, a year and a half now of the Obama administration, and you say what they get right, what they not get right, this is clearly one of the areas, in my judgment, that they got much more right than wrong. Much more right than wrong. Things could have been disastrous. And in fact, we came out of this crisis and with all of the major systemically important banks intact and the system functioning. And the administration gets a lot of credit for that. Now, tough job. He's elected not just by Wall Street or not just by Main Street, he's elected by all the people. So the rhetoric has to be somewhat responsive to that reality. But the policies, in my view, have been pretty rational, pretty thoughtful, and pretty effective.
Are they policies, Alan, that spur growth? Because I've got to tell you, talking to business leaders from the technology sector to Wall Street, their argument, it seems to be, is that the economic policies being put in place right now by the administration and looking back at stimulus are not doing what they need to create private sector jobs.
Well, I generally agree with Dick on this, and we've talked about it, and I think that the administration has to balance two, sort of ends of a pole that are very, very difficult to balance. On the one hand, there's an anger towards Wall Street and bankers, but in my opinion, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is an anger against the distribution of wealth in the country in total. There's an anger at the separate outcomes of the top and the bottom, and that's an underlying anchor. So when you get a problem like we had in the financial crisis, it pours out. It's deep, and I think people in Wall Street and in the business community way underestimate how deep that is. On the other hand, if you don't have policies that promote new capital being invested, as I said earlier, the economy will just simply not grow, and we will have a problem.
Are the policies promoting that?
I don't think the policies that have been promoted to date are a real problem. I think it's the complete uncertainty as to what the total agenda is. Look, I don't think a lot's going to happen between now and the elections. But
a lot of improvement, you mean?
I don't think there's going to be a lot in policy. I think that basically, the two parties have to go out and run on the platforms they have. But similar to maybe what happened in the first 2 years of the Clinton administration, there's still up for grabs what's going to happen in the second 2 years of this administration. And, they've created a commission with some very able people looking at this whole deficit issue. And I think that the opportunity, and we'll see what happens, but the opportunity is to be able to say to all sides, look, we have to have a total package that works. We have to prove to the people who are angry that it's fair, but we also have to prove to the people who, if we want them to put capital to work, we have to prove to them that capital is going to be treated in a way that is beneficial to them, or it goes somewhere else.
It seems
that's a balancing act. It's got to be one package.
Can we stay on this for a minute, though?
Absolutely.
Because I think there is no question that the number one priority has to be job creation right now. Not fixing a broken financial system, not fixing a broken healthcare delivery system, not fixing, a couple of broken ones. How do we create jobs? And so it's not so much the policies that have been brought to bear in terms of fixing those pre-existing problems that were inherited. It's the absence of policies that are focused on and targeted towards job creation.
Isn't that what stimulus was?
Well, no, but stimulus...
is it not working?
Stimulus is, if half the stimulus money is going to put people on construction programs or taking census numbers and all that sort of stuff, as soon as that money dries up, those jobs go away. The jobs get created in the private sector here in the United States, and 80% of job creation comes from small business. What we need and what's missing from the package is really a program targeted on investing in the things that small business needs, infrastructure it's called, to create jobs and creating the kinds of both tax incentives and financial incentives that will attract private capital because it has the certainty, as Alan said, that it's going to get a reward, and that creates confidence on the part of people creating small businesses.
There seems to have been, some would argue, a rush to inject the economy with hundreds of billions of dollars. The question is, did stimulus work? And it seems as though you're saying it didn't address the issue of handling real private sector job creation.
I think, I don't think stimulus ever would have created. In other words, it's very easy to go back. You have a patient on the table and the heart isn't pumping and you use the paddles. That is not a long-term way to cure that patient, but you say, let's make sure the heart pumps. Nobody really knows whether stimulus works because we don't have the counterfactual as to how bad this economy could have been without it. Whether it did or didn't, what we do know from the 30s, for example, is stimulus for 10 or 15 years replaced private capital. So the government kept stepping into replacing private capital. You could make a case that the shock of the 2008 events said private capital was going to be on strike no matter what. Stimulus could be a counterbalance to that. What you don't want to do is have to keep having the government make up for private capital. If that's step one, how do we bring private capital back? Unless we have a plan that at least looks credible, that, look, here's what your tax rate looks like, here's what regulation looks like, here's what we're doing with spending to try and bring it under control.
Right.
You can say whatever you want today. We're going to create a new bill. But if people look and say, the numbers just don't add up, they're going to have to come back and raise taxes 2 years from now or do something else. That's going to calculate into people's plans as to whether they want to invest today.
Is that, Dick, the biggest challenge now facing the administration in the final 2 years of the administration is having that plan?
Oh, I believe it is. To the extent that it's a plan that is focused on how do we get job creation engine going again, and it's got to find its soil, not its root, its soil in the private sector. That's where the capital is going to come from that will drive new business formation and job creation. And I think that's job one.
Is there any hope out there for that right now? Are you seeing any evidence of that, either of you?
I'm hopeful. I think the chapter hasn't been written. I think, as I said, I don't think a lot happens between now and the midterm election, so the administration does have a lot of time to be thinking about where it wants to come out of the box. Right now you got the developed world, it seems like a mess, right? You got the developing world, and they're, the ones that are growing.
Looks a lot better over there.
Can the developed world, figure out a way to restart the engines of growth? And I have to say, if there's any country in the developed world that can do it, I would bet on the United States first.
Would you, Dick?
Yeah, I would say I have fingers crossed. That's what I'd say. I have fingers crossed.
I don't know how encouraging that is.
Yeah,
we'll take it.
Fiercely bright guy is the president. Fiercely bright. Very thoughtful. and committed to succeeding in his role. Inherited a whole slew of problems that have sort of hijacked his first 18 months, 20 months. I know they're going to give focus to this. The issue is, do we have the will to make tough decisions? Because this is going to require some tough decisions, as opposed to political decisions, and that's a wait and see. But I'm like Alan. I am optimistic. I'm a believer in the president in terms of both intellect and disposition to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. The only thing I would think, it would be helpful to have more people in the inner circle there who are weighing in on this, who actually had some private sector experience.
Would either of you go work for the administration?
Well, I would volunteer my opinions, but we're still busy trying to get Citi bailed out, and I've got my grandson that I got to look after, as you know.
Jack.
Old Jack.
I do know.